I'm Steven from the Hills Maniacs, and today I'm going to be ranking all 9 movies from Phase 3 of the MCU. You know, the phase where the Avengers were sort of broken up, and then they were defeated, and then they weren't defeated, and a lot of stuff went down in this phase, so I'm going to talk about it. I basically ranked these by how important I felt they were to the overall story, that the phases were building up, like in the within the Infinity Saga, or if they played a role in the future of the MCU as well, like set up the future really well. So that's kind of how I wanted to rank these today. So I'm just going to get right into my list, starting with number 9. This movie is what I felt was the weakest one in Phase 3, and that's Ant-Man and the Wasp. The only important thing about this movie really was the end, after the end credits scene, when Scott Lang, or Ant-Man, is trapped inside the quantum realm after Thanos' snap, and that plays a bigger role in Avengers Endgame, because he's basically the reason they're able to create time travel, because he explained what the quantum realm was. But other than that, this movie was more of just like it was just a second movie for Ant-Man, and it did allow us to see the Wasp in action as well. Like, she's probably going to be, she'll be his like side hero in every other movie coming up. She's actually a little bit better than him, I'd say, but because he's like an idiot sometimes. But I think that that's really all this movie did, was just kind of set up that Wasp is now a character, and it gave us a little bit more into the quantum realm, but not much. So it didn't really do a lot, in my opinion. Like, I almost feel like they could have done without this movie, and just maybe had a scene in Avengers Infinity War or something where Ant-Man winds up in the quantum realm, or do that as like the end credits or whatever, something along those lines. But I feel like this movie wasn't really needed. It's like what I said in my Phase 2 rankings, sort of like the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 wasn't really that important of a movie. It didn't really do much to kind of set anything up, other than it brought in a new character that wasn't really that important. That's kind of how I feel about Ant-Man and the Wasp as well. It was just to get a second Ant-Man movie out there, so for a little bit more of a sort of fun adventure that followed up from Infinity War. Actually, it took place during the events of Infinity War, but I guess it was just to give us a little bit of a comic relief, so to speak, before we get back into, well, now what are the Avengers going to do to bring everybody back and stop Thanos? But other than that, it didn't really play a crucial role in Phase 3, I don't believe. So that's why it's the first one on my list. It's number 9. Weakest one in the... Nothing against Ant-Man. Like, I think he's an awesome character. It's just I don't think this movie really did much, in my opinion, for Phase 3. At number 8, I have actually placed Spiderman Homecoming, because I feel like it played off of Civil War rather than sort of connecting itself to the MCU on its own. And plus, it was technically a Spider-Man solo movie, but it also featured Tony Stark and Iron Man. Like, it featured Iron Man like a lot. Like, not that he was part of the battle or anything, but I think it tried to do more with sort of connecting it to the past movie rather than building anything forward. It was just kind of a fun Spider-Man movie. We finally got a different Spider-Man movie that's actually really good, since the Sam Raimi Spider-Mans were really awesome. But I don't think it actually... I mean, really, it just kind of showed the relationship with Tony Stark and Peter Parker, like how they're the sort of father and son dynamic you got there. But other than that, I don't feel it did as much to build into the next movies, or to kind of build up Spider-Man as quite of an Avenger just yet. Like in Infinity War, he does sort of get dubbed like an Avenger by Tony Stark, and he does a lot more in that movie, I think, than he even did in his own movie, really. But it's just another Spider-Man movie. It was a fun movie, but I don't think it was as important as some of the other movies on this list. At number 7, then I placed the other Spider-Man movie in this phase, which I didn't even realize that both Spider-Man movies were in Phase 3. I mean, or it took me a minute to realize that, but I've placed Spider-Man Far From Home at number 7 because it was a little bit better than Spider-Man Homecoming. Yes, it set up the future for Spider-Man, but I don't necessarily think it set up anything for like the rest of the MCU. Like, yeah, there were some hints at what could happen in Phase 4, like maybe the Fantastic Four. So that could kind of set up the future of the MCU a little bit. Like somewhere down the road when we see the Fantastic Four come into play, they'll probably be in the third Spider-Man movie. Who knows? Maybe they'll help him get through this now that he's been exposed for who he is and stuff. Like the whole world knows who Spider-Man is now. But I feel like this did more to set up once Spider-Man sort of fades out of the MCU, like Sony was going to do before they came to one more agreement with Disney to allow Spider-Man for at least 2 more films, or 3, I think, something like that. But I feel like this did more to set up that rather than set up like Peter Parker's future as like one of the Avengers, because it's looking like the Avengers is gonna have like there's gonna be a young Avengers, like all the kids, some of the kids and stuff. And I feel like Peter Parker could almost lead them, but I don't think that's what they're going with. So I don't really think that necessarily set anything else up other than the future of this Sony Spider-Man universe that they seem to be building up. Maybe they'll have a multiverse coming up. I'm not sure what's going on exactly, but I didn't feel it was really that important of a movie. It did end Phase 3 of the MCU, and it still tied into Avengers Endgame because Peter was feeling the effects of Tony Stark's death and everything else, as we all were, but just kind of seeing him as he could almost become the next Iron Man as well. I just don't feel that's the direction they're going, so that's why I put it at number 7. It was a better movie than like Ant-Man and the Wasp and Spider-Man Homecoming. Like, it improved on a lot of things from the first movie, and it left us kind of with a cliffhanger how Peter was exposed. We've never seen that before, where the whole world now knows who Spider-Man is. So at number 6, I put Black Panther. First of all, I just want to say rest in peace, Chadwick Boseman. It's very sad that he passed away. Earlier this year and everything. I am in no hurry to see a second Black Panther movie. They don't need to rush into anything. If they ever even do one, if they never do one, that's fine too. I mean, I could understand that, But as far as the movie goes, I thought it was a great movie and it appealed to a lot of different cultures and things like that. But to me, it wasn't as like exciting as some of the other movies on this list. It was just kind of like an aftermath to Civil War, just as much as Spider-Man Homecoming was. I don't know. I mean, it kind of set up. Really, all it set up was that Wakanda is now open to the world, and then the Avengers go there in Infinity War to bring Vision there. Like it didn't really actually like do anything. Black Panther is a cool character as well, and I think Shuri is going to play a major role coming up in the future. Because as of right now, she's pretty much the next tech-savvy person that we're going to get to see, since Tony Stark is no longer here. I feel like she's going to invent a lot of things for whatever the future of group of Avengers is going to be. They might go to her for the technology, but the Black Panther movie overall, I thought it was a good movie, and it did. Like I said, it played into a lot of different things and everything, and it did deserve to be on the highest grossing movie list, so, I mean, hey, all the better for it. I don't know, it made for a good battlefield scene in Infinity War, the events that happened in Wakanda, but other than that, it didn't really, like, affect anything for the future, or for the next few movies that were coming up in Phase 3, so that's why I put it at number 6, because it was the best of the ones I've said so far. At number 5, I put Doctor Strange. I thought this movie was, very trippy and wacky, and it was a lot of fun to watch. Plus, it featured what I feel is the greatest and funniest villain defeat in the history of cinema, where he just annoyed Dormammu until he finally gave in. he just kept repeating the same moment over and over and over again, like an annoying little gnat that you can't swat away until Dormammu had enough. I thought that was hilarious and creative. I'm sure a lot of you guys did as well. I don't think we've ever seen anything like that in like superhero films before, or just any film in general. Like, that's a unique way to defeat a villain. Aside from that, though, it definitely like established Doctor Strange as like the future, almost the future leader of the Avengers, because he seems to have his stuff together. He knows what's going on now. Like at the end of the film, he had a lot of powers. He sort of outsmarted everyone who didn't think that he was going to be able to do this, or like they were kind of just, sticking with their traditional thoughts on how to go about things, but he decided to take things outside the box a little bit. And although it did disregard their laws that they put in place, and like messing with time and everything else, but it definitely set up the future, because Doctor Strange played a huge role in Avengers Infinity War. Like, I think he got more screen time probably than like Thor. I think because like all these scenes where he gets captured and then Tony Stark and Spider-Man are trying to save him, and then he's the only one that really knew what was going to happen after he traveled forward in time 14 million times, or whatever the number was. So he played a crucial role there in knowing how to defeat Thanos and how to bring everyone back. So, I mean, just him, that was in Infinity War where it sort of established him as the future, but this one really showed us his backstory, and it helped us learn more about the character. And then going forward, we now know that he's the Sorcerer Supreme, he's the man in charge, he's the guy you go to when things seem a bit out of place. And I'm looking forward to Doctor Strange 2, in the Multiverse of Madness, and how that's going to affect things going forward as well. At number 4, I put Thor Ragnarok. This movie had the right mix of comedy and seriousness, and kept me entertained right up until the end. And who can forget, of course, how it set up Avengers Infinity War with, in the end credits scene with Thanos' ship, like, flying up right in front of Thor's ship. Like, as they're on their escape ship heading toward Earth, this huge ship just pops out. Like, that was definitely a cliffhanger itself. And that was actually how Avengers Infinity War ended up starting, was Thanos invading Thor's ship to get the Tesseract from Loki. So, I just thought that was really cool. And the movie did kind of set up like where Thor and Hulk were during the events of Civil War. They end up fighting each other, so they kind of had their own Civil War there as well. But it also set up nicely how, like, why Hulk is there to fight Thanos on Thor's ship and everything else. Like, it played perfectly into Avengers Infinity War. That's why I put it at number 4. I didn't think it was the greatest movie of the top. Like, it deserves to be in the top 4 for sure. I didn't think it was the greatest movie of Phase 3, but it definitely did what it was supposed to in terms of building toward that ultimate battle with Thanos in Infinity War, which was, of course, the next movie that came out. At number 3, I put Captain America Civil War. This movie did a great job of showing the true tension between the Avengers and how much they really are different from one another. Like, Tony Stark wants to go, like, is okay with the Sokovia Accords, okay with the government sort of sanctioning them, like, to do certain things, and then Captain America would rather have that free will to do what they please. It's kind of a choose which side you're on type of movie, so certain people align with Tony, certain people align with him, and they end up fighting each other at the end, and it just tears them apart, and that's kind of what leads to their downfall in Avengers Infinity War as well. So that set that up nicely, because it pit them against each other, which is also crucial to why they couldn't work together. Like, they finally turned against each other after all these years. We've seen little bits of tension throughout the first 2 Avengers films between them, but then this is kind of like this was almost a third Avengers movie in its own right, because it featured most of the Avengers cast in this, except for Thor and Hulk. So, like, everyone else was there fighting against each other, and I thought it did really well, sort of tearing the Avengers apart. And now we're wondering, like, well, where do we go from here? How are they going to come together to fight Thanos if they can't even get along with each other? And that's sort of why Zemo was like a really good villain there, because his plan was to tear them down, and he did exactly that. I'd say he pretty much succeeded at his plan. Like, they never wavered from, like, they kind of put aside their differences in Avengers Endgame and Infinity War to fight against Thanos. But honestly, you can still feel that tension there. It's a resounding effect of it once this movie is over. And I feel like that's going to continue into the future as well. Like, they're all going to start disagreeing with each other over certain actions that they take and things like that. We could have a Civil War 2 somewhere down the line. I thought it was a really interesting movie, though, and it did, like I said, build toward the Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, and really played a big role in how that movie played out as well. Alright, these last two I really had trouble with, because it's both of the last two Avengers movies, and I had a hard time deciding which one to put where. But at number 2, I have put Avengers Endgame. As much as I love this movie, and considering it is the highest grossing movie of all time, it made the most money out of any movie that's ever been in theaters, not counting for inflation. I really wanted to put this in first, but the only reason I didn't was because, despite all the fan service that it gave us and the filling in of different plot holes, I don't feel that it was the best movie of the third phase of the MCU, because honestly, all it did was, like, it was the aftermath of Infinity War. So it was basically like Infinity War Part 2, which is what it was originally titled, or going to be titled, I guess. But whereas Infinity War sort of, I'll explain Infinity War in a minute, but Endgame was more of just like, let's finish this fight, where Infinity War actually started the fight that they were meant to, take on, with the big villain Thanos finally making his arrival to Earth and everything else. This movie, though, did open the door for a lot of what's to come in the future, and it did give us the biggest crossover in movie history. But other than that, it was more of just a finish to the fight that they had in the previous movie, like I said, rather than an actual fourth Avengers film, like with a whole new villain or anything like that. Now at number 1, of course, then I put Avengers Infinity War. The reason I put this here is because it felt like the most serious of all the movies we've seen, or at least in this phase. Like, you could feel the tension for every character throughout the whole film as they struggled to find ways to stop Thanos before he could collect the Infinity Stones. And it certainly left us in fear every time he gained a new stone. Like, now, most of us probably knew, like, if you read the comic books, you probably knew, well, he's going to snap, this is going to happen. But even still, this movie did a good job of giving everybody, even the comic book fans, tension, because you could feel it. Like, you don't want him to do this. We don't want him to snap away half of our favorite characters and things like that. And it felt unpredictable, because you never knew which stone he was going to acquire next, or if he was going to kill off one of our favorite characters to get that stone. So, and it also felt more like an adventure movie rather than a superhero movie. And the fact that they managed to almost make it seem as though Thanos was actually like the protagonist or the main character of the movie really drove the story even further, and made it even greater than it already was. The biggest reason I think I'm calling this the best movie of Phase 3, though, is because of its huge cliffhanger ending. When Thanos finally did collect the Infinity Stones and snapped away half of all life in existence, we watched as, like, half or a bunch of our favorite characters started getting dusted away. Like, almost the majority of the Guardians of the Galaxy got dusted away. We saw a lot of the other Avengers get dusted away, except the original 6 who managed to stay there. Like, Doctor Strange was gone, Spider-Man, Black Panther. Seeing all these characters slowly fading to dust was very intense, and I'm sure it left a lot of you in shock, as it did me. And it was kind of surprising to see, or it kind of left us guessing who is going to get dusted, like which characters are we not gonna see in the next film, you know? And then it also opened the door for Endgame, like are they going to be able to bring everybody back? Endgame could have easily just said, or had it end where they don't manage to bring anybody back, and then it would have really left this huge void in the Avengers, you know? But I don't think I've ever seen a movie that did this sort of cliffhanger ending better than how Avengers Infinity War did, because it left us wanting to see the next movie. It left us wanting to see, well, how are the Avengers going to bring everyone back? How are they going to defeat Thanos? What's going to happen next? Like, I think it did this the best that I've ever seen in a movie, so that's why Avengers Infinity War was the best movie of Phase 3. So there you go, guys. That was my list. Let me know what you guys thought of this list down in the comments section. Where would you rank all these movies in Phase 3 of the MCU? It was kind of tough choosing where some of these go because I liked all these movies. I liked all the, the Avengers movies. And I like the whole MCU so far, and I'm looking forward to the future. So it's kind of hard to rank these sort of things, but let me know how you guys would rank these, and be sure to like this video and subscribe for more videos like this. We got plenty of things we could rank in the future, so keep your eyes open for that as well, everybody, and take care.